What is interesting is Punjab, which is otherwise the best performing province, is not necessarily the best performing province when it comes to governance and management and public financing. So the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa leads in governance, and interestingly, Sindh is the best performing province when it comes to public financing of education. So these indicate the different strengths and limitations and the priority areas that each provincial government needs to focus on. Balochistan unfortunately struggles across all 4 domains. Islamabad is the best performing district in the country, not surprisingly. Again, you can see significant inter-provincial variations. With the exception of Islamabad, there is no district from Balochistan or Sindh in the top ranked 10 districts. Most of them are from Punjab, with only 2 districts from the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. These are the lowest 10 ranked districts. As you can see, Balochistan is over proportionately represented. In the lowest ranked 10 districts, 6 are from Balochistan, 2 from KP, 1 from Sindh. This is a map of the overall index. It's not a very encouraging picture, but this is the reality, as you can see. So we have classified the scorecards into 5 categories: very high, high, medium, and low performers. Unfortunately, none of the districts in the country could make it to the very high performance category. Only Islamabad could make it to the high performance category. As you can see, the 1 green zone. And then out of 134, 133 districts fall either in medium or low performance category. And in the medium category, most of them are from Punjab. As you can see, North and Central Punjab, mostly in the upper range of the medium performance. South Punjab, mainly in the lower range of the medium performance. All of Balochistan's districts are in the low performance category. There are districts within the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as well, and most of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa's districts are also in the medium performance category. Now this is domain-wise. That was overall score. When it comes to infrastructure and access, you can see we have some high performers across the country, at least some green districts. Once again, Punjab leads other provinces significantly, and we have Karachi as green, and mostly Peshawar Valley and settled districts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa are also in the green. In Balochistan, there are pockets of good performing districts around Quetta, and in the south of Balochistan, the districts there are performing better than other parts. This is learning, and this is, I think, if there is one single takeaway from this exercise, it is this map. It paints a sorry state of affairs. Our learning scores, as I'll go to the indicator level analysis, reveals that the worst performing indicators are those related to reading and numeracy skills. And mind you, we have added a what we call an easy indicator, that is the metric exams pass rate. So despite that, this map is red. If we exclude that indicator, which has basically inflated the learning outcomes score, probably all of this would be red. Equity and inclusion. So in this, we basically measure gender parity, inclusiveness for differently abled, and access to technology. This domain is red primarily because of lack of access to technology. That's the worst performing indicator in this domain. On gender parity, there is decent progress, and this is governance and management. This is also an area we want to highlight. So, as you can see, in governance and management, again, there are very few green districts across Pakistan, and this basically is driven primarily by the frequent transfer postings of senior management in the education departments. So the average tenure of the senior management are 6 to 7 months, 8 months, stretched over a period of 3 years. This is public financing for education. Again, this is after learning. This is probably the second most important takeaway from today's index. public financing for education. One important distinction that I would like to highlight. So overall education spending is not low. There is moderate performance on public spending on education, but there are two challenges that basically bring the overall score in this domain low, bring it down. First is the share of education in the development spending of the government. So while we have education budgets, high education budgets, but they are current budgets that are going towards salaries. The challenge with education financing is that there is the share of education in the development budgets of provinces that is very inadequate. So as a result, while we do have an overall high share of education in the total provincial budgets, but when you disaggregate it, we find that 80 to 90% of that budget goes towards salaries. Whereas we address our training needs, our access related needs through development budget. That is where increased financing for education is required. We also experimented with drawing certain correlation plots to see which aspects of inputs are correlated with certain outcomes. As you can see, governance has some correlation with infrastructure and access, but there is no strong correlation with learning. Financing, again, it's not strongly correlated with learning, but it has some positive correlation with infrastructure and access. This is the most important slide for me. So now I gave you a snapshot of the overall index, the domain level analysis. Now I'll share with you the indicator level. So what are the good performers and the bad performers? And please note that these vary across provinces, but we are providing a national picture. So the weakest indicators that have driven Pakistan's low scores in this education domain, these are the weakest indicators. First is internet connectivity in schools. Almost across Pakistan, this is the poorest performing indicator, and this is an area where significant investments need to be made. Learning outcomes, numeracy and reading skills. We used to, because of the lack of availability of data on learning outcomes in the public sector, we used whatever data was available. So we used ASAS data, we used NAT data, and because of the limitations in the geographical coverage of some of these data sources, we took an average of 3-year average to balance out any distortions. Despite that, the indicators on numeracy and reading skills are among the poorest performers in this index. Tenure of secondary education, as I said, administrative continuity is a key, and this is one of the major drivers of poor performance in the governance sector. Share of education in development spending, as I explained in the public financing part, that though the overall education budget is high, but the problem with that financing is that 90% of it goes towards salaries and operations. So the share of education in development budgets needs to be enhanced. Lastly, this is a very interesting story, and I think someday we would like to conduct a case study on this. So the provinces of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Punjab have remarkably high scores when it comes to the availability of allied facilities in schools. Sindh and Balochistan province consistently show low scores when it comes to the availability of allied facilities in schools. So school availability and allied facilities is particularly a problem in the province of Balochistan and Sindh. So in relative terms, these are the better performing indicators. This doesn't mean that we don't need to do anything about these, but just compared to the there are overall 34 indicators in this index. So out of those 34 indicators, these are the best performers, these are the better performers. Transition rates, whatever high scores we had in the access domain were driven primarily by transition scores, high transition rates compared to the other indicators in that domain. pass percentage rate in mathematics exams. To use my favorite jargon, ये learning outcomes में ईमान का कमजोर तरीन दर्जे वाला इंडिकेटर है और हमने इसको यूज किया है, but it also highlights very interesting insights about our assessment system. I'll share those with you later. Gender parity, it's encouraging, लेकिन I think इस पे हमें तसल्ली नहीं करनी चाहिए, because when we compare ourselves with our regional peers and the rest of the world, we are still lagging, but gender parity is performing well compared to some of these other indicators. Share of school in education budget. So we, as I said, the overall allocations for education are not necessarily on the lower side. The challenge is when we disaggregate those. Lastly, teacher availability. This is also tricky. Please allow me to explain it. We all hear that teacher shortages is one of the primary supply side limitations of the poor quality of education or the high dropout rates, which is true. However, our data also indicates that one of the primary challenges in the management of teaching staff is the inefficient and inequitable distribution of whatever teaching staff is available. So, in terms of student-teacher ratios, particularly at the middle and high school level, Pakistan has the best ratios in the world. There are some parts of the country where we, in high school, we have one teacher for every 5 or 6 students. So it's the efficient, optimal, and equitable distribution and utilization of whatever teaching staff we have. Because of the inequitable distribution, we have teachers and particularly the transfer posting policy of teachers. So on paper, this is a good indicator. Teachers are available, but when you go on the ground, the transfer posting policy is not rationalized. The bulk of them are posted in urban centers, and we have shortages in rural areas where we have the bulk of single teacher primary schools. ये एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट स्लाइड है और ये चूंकि हमारे मिनिस्टर साहब भी बार बार हाईलाइट करते हैं, ये मैं आपसे शेयर करना चाहता हूँ. एंड आई थिंक दिस इज अ वेरी डिस्टर्बिंग फैक्टर के हमने देखा कि जो ओवरऑल इंडेक्स में टॉप 5 और बॉटम 5 डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स हैं जिनके स्कोर्स में जमीन आसमान का फर्क है. हमने जब मैट्रिक एग्जामिनेशन में पास परसेंटेज देखा तो कई सूबों में ऐसे जो लोवेस्ट रैंक डिस्ट्रिक्ट है, जो अदरवाइज टॉप रैंक डिस्ट्रिक्ट से बहुत पीछे है, मैट्रिक एग्जाम में वो सबसे आगे है. विच ईदर मीन्स कि ये जो बाकी 33 इंडिकेटर्स है इनके डेटा की क्वालिटी ठीक नहीं है, या फिर इसका मतलब ये है कि ये जो एग्जाम्स की क्वालिटी है मैट्रिक की वो सही ग्राउंड पिक्चर की अक्कासी नहीं कर रहा. सो ये इस ग्राफ में ये आप देखिए, अगर हम बलूचिस्तान से स्टार्ट लें, ये ब्लू में आर द टॉप 5 डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स इन बलूचिस्तान ओवरऑल, रेड में और द लोवेस्ट रैंक डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स इन बलूचिस्तान. ये मैं ओवरऑल पे परफॉर्मेंस बता रहा हूं, लेकिन एग्जामिनेशन स्कोर में आप देखिए लोवेस्ट रैंक डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स टॉप 5 से बेहतर परफॉर्म कर रहे हैं. ये कोइंसिडेंस नहीं है, इट्स बेसिकली रिफ्लेक्शन ऑफ द पोर क्वालिटी ऑफ द असेसमेंट सिस्टम. ये आप एवरेज देखें कि इधर बढ़ रहा है. मसलन नसीराबाद एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट है जो कि ओवरऑल पूरे पाकिस्तान में बॉटम 10 में है, लेकिन उसका मैट्रिक का स्कोर वो पाकिस्तान में टॉप 5 में आता है. So that's one aspect. Punjab is probably the only province जहां पे जो टॉप रैंक 5 डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स हैं और बॉटम रैंक 5 डिस्ट्रिक्ट से जब आप टॉप 5 से बॉटम 5 डिस्ट्रिक्ट की तरफ जाते हैं, सो स्कोर या डिक्लाइन होता है या कम से कम वही रहता है. वी वेलकम हर एक्सेलेंसी ब्रिटिश हाई कमिश्नर मिस जेन मैरियट. थैंक यू फॉर जॉइनिंग अस. सो Punjab's examination system indicates better rigor and fair distribution of matric scores. The same problem we see in KP. You see, the otherwise top 5 districts are scoring low compared to the otherwise poorest districts in the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. And this is also a reflection on the quality of assessments conducted by different boards. So for example, जो इधर है ये अक्सर अहमदाबाद बोर्ड जिसकी एक अलग रेपुटेशन है उसके डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स हैं, और जो नीचे जो अदरवाइज द लोएस्ट परफॉर्मेंस they have high scores than some of these best performances. We see a similar story in Sindh. So again, this indicates that there is a need for major reforms in our assessment system, particularly in the provinces of Sindh, Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Priority areas for improvement. So what are the key policy lessons from this index? First, at the national level and probably across all provinces, the top three priorities for education are: first is improving learning outcomes. Without, as we will share in the next recommendation as well, learning outcomes are the key. Public financing for education, I would like to highlight that we not only need to increase public financing, but we also need to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of public expenditures on education. So that's a challenge, and we need to ensure that public expenditures are aligned with the most pressing needs of the education system. And governance and management. Within governance, administrative continuity. Some of the best performing provinces in this index had education, had tenures of education secretary that didn't last more than 6 or 7 months on average. When you have an education department with a workforce of 150,000 people who are present in every union council and every village, how can you manage that if the average tenure of the senior management is not more than 6 or 7 months? The second important learning for us is even improving access is tied to learning. My colleague and friend Sami Sadoze is also sitting there. This is his favorite notion as well, and this data and our previous research data has proven it again and again. You can't address the crisis of out-of-school children without doing something about learning, because parents' perception of the quality of education is a major determinant of their decision to send their school to a public school or not. And this is proven by data. The latest census data shows that 80% of your out-of-school children are those who have never been to school. Which means that probably our primary problem is not dropout rates. Our primary problem is that people do not have faith in the public schooling system. They are not coming there in the first place. So 80% of your out-of-school children have never enrolled in schools. So that means if we want to improve the out-of-school children crisis, we have to improve parents' perception of the quality of education in schools. And that can be done by improving learning outcomes. And there are many micro studies which have proven this time and again. Need for increased as well as better public financing. At the risk of repetition, as we saw in the correlations, there was weak correlation between public financing and learning, strong correlation between public financing and access, but access is tied to learning. So we need to not only increase financing but improve its efficiency. Need for major reforms in assessment systems, as I already highlighted. You saw the differences that a district that was among the lowest performing districts across Pakistan was among the best performing districts when it came to metric examination scores. Geographically targeted education interventions. As we saw, so I would also like to highlight that there are significant variations within provinces as well that need to be prioritized. So for example, in Sindh, it's basically Karachi, Hyderabad versus the rest of Sindh. The good performers are Karachi and Hyderabad, and then the rest of Sindh on the same scale. In Punjab, it's basically North and Central Punjab versus South Punjab. In Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Mansehra division basically leads, followed by Peshawar Valley or Madan, and then as you can see, Kohistan. Kohistan is the lowest ranked district across the country. So in terms of intra-provincial variation, the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has the highest intra-provincial inequality. because the best performing districts as well as the worst performing districts are both located in this province. Punjab and KP have the least intra-provincial variation for entirely different reasons. So Balochistan across the board has lower scores, and Punjab across the board has scores that fall in the medium performance category. So addressing regional, intra-provincial, and this will be the last slide, as administrative continuity, we have already highlighted that. This is the last slide. So one of the objectives of developing this index was to conduct a thorough scan of the existing data regime, identify areas for improvement. So these are some of the recommendations for our data organizations, the improvements that need to be made in the education data regime. First of all, learning outcomes. Right now, we do not measure learning outcomes in the public sector. We have NAT, but NAT provides us a snapshot of performance at the provincial level. We need to measure learning outcomes at district level and ideally at school level. That is when we will be able to improve learning outcomes. This is another important area. I'm surprised that despite this massive investment in education data regime over the past 2 decades across Pakistan, the data on education workforce is still in very poor shape. In particular, so at best you have data on filled positions and vacant positions, but that's not enough. We need live data on actual postings. Where are these people posted? We need district-wise real-time availability of data, and lastly, tenures of senior management. We were lucky that we were able to get data on the tenures of secondary education, but that's it because that's written on the boards that are in their offices. What about the heads of attached departments? What about the district education officers? That data is available nowhere. So that's another area for improvement. Tagging and coding of public financing system. So for those of you who are not familiar, the government of Pakistan has made impressive progress when it comes to integration and automation of the public financing regime. We have the PIFRA, the FAB system, where we can track public expenditures in real time. However, there is still room for improvement, and there are issues with coding and tagging of that data. So for example, budgets that are being spent in districts are often tagged in the provincial headquarters. So as a result, Lahore, Karachi, Quetta, Peshawar, their budget data often shows an inflated picture because data is tagged there, the codes. So that's an area where improvement. Data on technology access at the school level. The existing data regime on access to internet, access to computer labs in the schools is very weak. This is another area for improvement, particularly given that we are transitioning to a knowledge economy and emerging technologies are a priority area. Lastly, this is my favorite area. I've been trying, and I hope Honorable Minister can push this agenda further. In my humble opinion, district has become a redundant unit for all practical purposes. The real unit of administration is political constituencies. That is how resources are allocated. That is how accountability, which is the most important instrument of accountability with the public, is vote. So accountability is also aligned with provincial and national constituencies. My single biggest recommendation on the data front to the Honorable Minister and to our data organizations would be, if we could make PSLM and other data available by provincial and national constituencies, then we can attribute good or bad performance to someone. Right now, there are districts in Balochistan where one district has 5 constituencies. There are districts where 5 districts together make up one constituency. So in such cases, how do you attribute good or bad performance? We can't. So as a result, the demand side advocacy that should advocate for more education reforms, for better education outcomes, we don't see that pressure. With this, I would like to thank you for your patience and presence.